Hello everyone, thanks for taking the time out of your day to check out my video. My name is AwesomeGuy4000 and today I'll be going over every Season 3 of Fortnite. If you like what you see here, please consider subscribing and giving the video a like, as I'm currently on a mission to get to 1,000 subscribers before June. I would really appreciate it. Now without further ado, let's get into it. The Season 3s of Fortnite are really split in terms of fan enjoyment. Some fans love them and some hate them. According to Fortnite GG, Chapter 1 Season 3 is the most positively received Season 3 in Fortnite history, followed by Chapter 2 Season 3, Chapter 3 Season 3, Chapter 5 Season 3, and lastly Chapter 4 Season 3, making Chapter 4 Season 3 Wilds the most poorly received Season 3 in Fortnite history. I definitely disagree with this ranking, but I'll get into my own thoughts later when I finish giving the breakdown of a season. I'll be breaking down each season by the theme, map changes, battle pass, loot pool, and storyline, starting from the earliest release to the latest release, so that puts Chapter 1 Season 3 up first. Let's go. Now the first thing we need to understand going into Chapter 1 Season 3 is that this was the season Fortnite blew up into the massive game it is today. Not only that, but also that it was only the third season Fortnite has ever seen at the time of its release, so the game was still very new and figuring itself out. Nonetheless, Fortnite was poppin' at the time. Every Twitch streamer was playing it, and it seemed like everyone you spoke to knew what Fortnite was. But what about it did people enjoy so much for it to still outperform newer Season 3s to this day? People could debate a lot of things like nostalgia, but to answer the question, we need to understand why people enjoyed it back then in the first place, and the answer is simplicity. Fortnite was fresh at the time. The gaming scene had never seen anything like it before. It felt new and like anyone could just pick it up and have fun with it. The simple cartoony graphics, the map, the loot pool, it was easy for everyone to grasp and understand. Now that we have an understanding of the state the game was in at the time, let's actually analyze the season itself. By far the biggest negative of Chapter 1 Season 3 are the map changes. The only notable thing that was added to the map was the iconic Lucky Landing POI, but compared to the prior season's POI introductions, with even more iconic POIs being added like Tilted Towers, Snobby Shores, and Shifty Shafts, it felt underwhelming. Season 3 is actually the smallest seasonal map change we have ever gotten in Fortnite. Now let's talk about the biggest positive of the season, the thing people liked about it the most at the time, the loot pool. Back in Chapter 1 Season 3, the loot pool consisted of the scoped, burst, and regular AR, as well as the LMG and minigun for assault rifles, the pump, tac, and heavy shotgun for the shotguns, the tac SMG and suppress SMG for the SMGs, the suppress and regular pistol, as well as the hand cannon and revolver for the pistols, the hunting rifle, the semi-auto sniper, and the bolt action sniper for the snipers, the crossbow, the grenade launcher momentarily replaced with the egg launcher for Easter, the guided missile and RPG for explosives. For utility items, there were smoke grenades, boogie bombs, impulses, portaforts, bushes, grenades, clingers, and C4s. For healing, bandages, medkits, minis, big pots, slurp juice, and the chug jug. Finally, the damage trap, launch pad, and the cozy campfire. But what were the new things that Season 3 actually introduced to the game? Well, Season 3 actually introduced a lot. On Season 3 launch, the hand cannon and crossbow were added, Update 3.10 introduced the hunting rifle, Update 3.30 introduced llamas and C4s, Update 3.31 introduced the heavy shotgun, Update 3.40 added the guided missile and vending machines, Update 3.50 introduced the portafort, and Update 3.60 introduced clingers, so a lot of iconic things. The hunting rifle is in some of the craziest Fortnite clips, llamas are a staple of Fortnite's identity, and people still to this day wish the guided missile launcher was in the game. Moving on now to the battle pass. Much like the theme, which we'll get into in just a moment, the battle pass had a mostly space theme with mission specialists at tier 1, Moonwalker at tier 50, and Dark Voyager at tier 70. The Battle Pass did feature some non-space theme skins as well, however, like Rust Lord at tier 23, Elite Agent at tier 87, and the infamous Reaper skin, otherwise known as John Wick at the time, at tier 100. To gauge how well each received Battle Pass was, I'll be using Fortnite GG to tally up all the fire emojis and add them to get an overall fire emoji score for the skins. Chapter 1 Season 3 has a 49,600 fire emoji score for its battle pass. At the end of the video, we will compare the battle passes to see which was the best among fans. Emote score will not be included. But for the record, Season 3's battle pass had the Take the L emote, the Best Mates emote, and the Robot emote. We're still seeing the effects of the Take the L emote to this day. Now for the theme. As I mentioned before, the theme was space. However, only half of the battle pass had space themed skins, and there were no space themed locations added to the map. The space theme would later come into fruition when Fortnite's storyline would begin later that season. On March 20th, 2018, a meteor appeared in the sky over the island, visible to anyone that looked up. Everyone was theorizing about where this meteor was going to hit, and people eventually chose Tilted Towers, the most iconic POI at the time, to be the victim of of the meteor. Over the course of the remaining days of the season, the meteor would gradually appear closer and closer to the map, and signs with meteors on them would appear in Tilted Towers, seemingly confirming the fan theories that Tilted Towers was going to be hit. On April 25th, it was possible for small meteors to come crashing down onto the map at random, destroying or killing anything in their way. Eventually though, the meteor would not hit Tilted and instead only destroy half of Dusty Depot to create Dusty Divot. And that is the basis of Chapter 1 Season 3. Now for my opinion, and of course feel free to leave yours down below as well, just please stay civil. I started playing Fortnite on Chapter 1 Season 3, more towards the end. I don't remember a lot, but what I do remember is that I was a huge Fortnite hater before I played the game, so I must have enjoyed Season 3 enough for it to change my mind. However, compared to seasons that we have nowadays in Fortnite, Season 3 would be absolutely garbage. Imagine if we only got one small POI for a seasonal map change, and that was it for the whole season. People will be outraged. The amount of things they added throughout the season were good, but that's practically what we get at the beginning of a new season now. The whole loot pool in general that was seen as simple back then as a positive thing is now seen as a negative thing. The performance of the OG mode has shown us that Fortnite players over the years have gotten used to fast-paced quick gameplay with a variety of unique weapons, and maybe with the exception of the guided missile, Season 3 wouldn't live up to the standards of most modern Fortnite players. And of course this doesn't mean it's a bad season, it just means it's not for everyone, as there are lovers and haters for every season. The battle pass isn't my cup of tea to be honest, but the introduction to the storyline was great, but again compared to future storylines, it's lacking. The enjoyment of this season for you really comes down to if you played it and how you evolved as a Fortnite player. If you played it back then, you most likely enjoyed it, but looking back it's boring compared to what you like now with the game. But that doesn't get rid of the fact that you did enjoy it at that time among everyone else that did as well. Now for my personal ranking. I'll give the theme of Season 3 a 6 out of 10, the map changes a 2 out of 10, the battle pass a 4 out of 10, the loot pool a 7 out of 10, and the storyline an 8 out of 10. I give the theme a 6 because only half of the skins in the battle pass were space themed and nothing to do with the map of space themed, but the meteor to kick off the storyline at the end was really cool. It doesn't take a lot to please me with the storyline, but I will say I like the environmental storytelling way more than the stuff we have nowadays. Overall, I'll give Season 3 a strong 7. If they bring back an OG how it really was, I'll probably play it quite a lot. Now it's time for Chapter 2 Season 3 Splashdown, the long-awaited flood season. With Chapter 2's introduction of swimming, it was only a matter of time before a Fortnite flood season would be introduced. And what better time to drop it on the player base than right after the most widely loved season in history. Coming off the incredible success that Chapter 2 Season 2 had, Chapter 2 Season 3 had a lot to live up to. Chapter 2 Season 3 followed the same newly introduced formula that the prior season introduced: bosses, mythics, and vaults. Before we get into that though, let's talk about the most prominent thing in this season, the flood. The flood in Chapter 2 Season 3 is by far responsible for the biggest map change we have ever seen in Fortnite. The water level rose by 5 grids, submerging dirty docks, craggy cliffs, weeping woods, and stormy swamp. The water gave home to many floating islands of trash that were the main landmark locations introduced. Also, a company named No Sweat Insurance was responsible for putting Pleasant Park, Sweaty Sands, and Frenzy Farm, as well as other landmarks on inflatables to save them from being completely destroyed by the flood. Each of those areas got a revamp, including the agency, which is now the Authority, a recolored agency with walls around it to stop the floodwater. New locations for Tilla, Rickety Rig, and Catty Corner were added, Rickety Rig being a ruined remix of the Rig POI that was added last season. The yacht was ruined, however still afloat, just now a landmark. The grotto was blocked off and the shark was destroyed by the flood. At certain spots around the map, there were whirlpools that players could use to get sucked into and spat back out for a redeploy for a little mobility. Another notable change was the addition of sharks. They attacked players on sight and could also be used as mobility if you use a fishing rod on it, allowing you to steer the shark and drive it. Sometimes sharks would spawn glowing purple or gold that upon kill will give you loot. From beginning to the end of the game, by a random chance, a marauder pod could drop down from the sky and land on an island, releasing marauders that attack everyone they see. Fire physics were also added in this season that could spread from structure to structure and deal tick damage to the player. You could start a fire by blowing up a car, yes, cars were added in this season too, shooting a gas tank or pump, or by catching fireflies in a jar and throwing them. The water level will drop by a grid weekly, giving players a constantly evolving map and revealing flooded locations once again now in ruin, later to be restored. When the water level finally fully dropped back to normal, the dreaded Coral Castle POI was revealed. This POI had its lovers and haters. It was hated for being in a steep divot and not fitting the build grid, but loved for its vibe and the amount of brick you could easily obtain there. Now let's talk about the battle pass and theme of the season. The season theme, like Season 3, isn't exactly very established in the battle pass. The theme itself seems to be more neutral, like focus on summer and water vibes in a direct theme. Nonetheless, the battle pass includes Ocean at Tier 1, Fade Tier 2, Debrella at Tier 5, which was the first and only fully customizable glider, Scuba Jonesy at Tier 20, Jules at Tier 40, Kit at Tier 60, Sionia at tier 80, and Eternal Night at tier 100. Throughout the battle pass, you would also be able to unlock edit styles for Faye that would make them look cooler and cooler. All the skins combined in Fortnite GG have a total score of 46,200 fire emojis, which means people think this was worse than Chapter 1 Season 3's battle pass. But wait, why is the map flooded in the first place? In the prior season, a rogue agent named Midas used the 0 point under the map, the nexus of all existence, to power what he called the Doomsday device, which was really just a way to push the storm back and stop the loop. With the struggle, the device eventually successfully pushed back the storm and stopped the loop. The IO, the people controlling the loop at the time, used the ocean to act as the storm to be able to continue the loop temporarily as they worked on getting the actual storm back up. And I guess when they did, they were like, well, don't need that anymore, and just let it all crash down back into the map and flood it. So that's why the map is flooded. But what is the overarching storyline in the season? Well, it's actually pretty underwhelming. For the majority of the season, nothing interesting would happen until August 1st, where a small crashed space pod could be found on a small island above craggy cliffs. Players could do some quests to help launch it back into space, but after that it was never heard of again and was one of the most forgettable storylines in Fortnite ever. But let's now focus on the gameplay of the season, the loot pool. Firstly, the pump shotgun was vaulted for the second time, replaced with the charge shotgun, a shotgun you had to charge up for higher damage. It was controversial at first, but people eventually grew to enjoy it and use it effectively. The loot pool consisted of the burst and regular AR, the tac and charge shotgun, the suppressed, rapid, and regular SMG, the pistol, the hunting rifle and bolt action sniper, as well as the rocket launcher. For healing items, we had bandages, medkits, minis, big pots, chug splashes, floppers, slurp floppers, peppers, bananas, and the new corn and cabbage. Stink bombs could also be obtained by eliminating marauders, and crash pads are in the game as well. In update 13.20, the flare gun, upgrade bench, and golden mushroom were added. The golden mushroom had a 1 in 10,000 chance of spawning in the place of a normal mushroom. If you ate it, you gained full health. On update 13.40, cars were finally added to the game. Now let's go over the mythics of the season and how to obtain them. Kit shockwave launcher and mythic charge shotgun can be obtained by eliminating Kit at Caddy Corner. The mythic burst AR and bottomless chug jug, a chug jug with infinite uses, can be obtained by eliminating Ocean at the Fortilla. Jules' jump gun and grappler could be obtained from killing Jules at the Authority. Upon the death of each boss, a key card will also drop for that location that you can use to open a vault for even more loot. Now in my opinion, this season actually beats Chapter 2 Season 2. The map changes are way bigger, the vibes are better, and the loot pool felt unique but simple, like Chapter 1 Season 3's but with a creative twist. It introduced cars, which changed the pacing of Fortnite forever. On the other hand, the storyline was cool to get to the season, but lacked and was disappointing in the season itself. I remember playing the game all day back when the season was out and enjoying every second of it, winning or losing. One thing I will say though, Kid's shockwave launcher was way too overpowered. You could just have like 6 shockwaves ready to shoot whenever you want, so the mobility was just broken. It was annoying getting people down to almost dead just to have them shockwave away 5 times so I can't kill them. Also, rocket ammo just felt very common for some reason, so you didn't have to really conserve your shots. Besides that, I love the weekly map changes. Getting to see what the island would look like with a little bit less water every week was exciting, and with all that, I never really understood the big deal with Coral Castle. I mean, sure it was in a divot, but Dusty Divot was in a divot too, and nobody cared back then, and that was when people were terrible at building. I honestly just think that it was the hype for the location. The build up to its reveal just let a lot of people down and didn't live up to the expectations of people, leading to a lot of people hating it. If you played back then you'd remember everyone saying that it was going to be some crazy Atlantis POI. I'll give map changes for this season a 10 out of 10, the theme is 7 out of 10, the battle pass an 8 out of 10, the loot pool a 7 out of 10, bumped down 1 point because of Kit's shockwave launcher, and the storyline a 2 out of 10. The only thing that's really lacking in Chapter 2 Season 3 is theme and storyline, but I can't really think of anything to suggest that would make it better, so I guess it was fine. It just could have done with being a little more creative. I also wish they gave us more context on what was going on with that space pod. After it left, we never heard about it again. Overall, I'll give Chapter 2 Season 3 a good 9 out of 10. It was a fun one. Chapter 3 Season 3 vibin'. Now this is a weird one. Being the last season that Donald Mustard worked on, which if you don't know who he is, he was the creative director, meaning he was the one responsible for the storyline until it retired. The season almost feels like a goodbye to him, the transition between an old era and new era of Fortnite, his storyline finally coming to a conclusion, and the future of which now trusted in the hands of others. However, this season was generally not received well by the fanbase, no question about it. Maybe not necessarily as bad, but lacking or boring, an opinion I will fight against until the day I die, but I'll get to that later. First off, let's begin with the story. What led us into Chapter 3 Season 3? Well, the war for the 0 point has finally been won. The 7 beats the IO, setting the 0 point free. With the 0 point's newfound freedom, it rests underwater and gives birth to an entire new biome, one of the most visually pleasing and unique biomes in Fortnite to this day, the reality biome. However, the 0 point being free might have unforeseen consequences the 7 aren't ready for. Consequences that would never really be fully explained, but definitely felt. Now that the 0 point was free, a strange entity known as the Herald was able to use it and slowly corrupt the island with Chrome, a dark energy, and then disperse it, leaving the 0 point vulnerable. For what? We might never know, but at the time it seemed like all arrows pointed to the last reality. But we haven't seen anything from the last reality since Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 8, and we're in Chapter 6 Season 2 now, so the storyline as well as theme took a little bit of a break this season. Chapter 3 Season 3 really felt like a return to form in a way for Fortnite. No crazy storyline, no crazy theme, just chill vibes, just like the first 3 seasons of Chapter 1. The loot pool was diverse, but reserved, however still unique. But as we've discussed before, simplicity isn't always a bad thing, especially when we have the ability to look back at the past and remix the idea of simplicity in Fortnite. I believe that is exactly what Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3 was. I think I genuinely have had the most fun I've had ever playing Fortnite in this season. I know that's controversial and a lot of it comes down to just personal preference and gameplay, but I'll get to why I liked it later when I get to my opinion. I just couldn't help but say some things right now about how I feel about it. Anyways, here's the complete loot pool of the season. The season had a lot of variety in weapons. It had the suppressed, combat, ranger, striker burst, and hammer AR all in the same loot pool. It had the striker pump, prime, 2-shot, auto, and dragon's breath shotguns all together. For SMGs, they had the stinger, charge, combat, and suppressed SMGs, the sidearm pistol and revolver for pistols, the heavy sniper for snipers, and of course the DMR for marksman rifles. The hammer AR, charge SMG, 2-shot shotgun, the prime shotgun, and the DMR were the new weapons added. The hammer AR to this day is a beloved AR with its low kick and good accuracy. The other weapons, however, they can definitely go a bit under the radar depending on the type of player you are. If you're a player that likes sticking to what you know works, you never got to see how good the DMR and 2-shot shotgun could be. If you took the time to get good with the DMR, you could annihilate people at any range with it, and yes, it could easily outperform the striker burst if you hit all your shots. The 2-shot shotgun was overlooked because I feel like people just didn't give it much of a chance. If you had good aim and hit both of the shots square on, especially with the mythic version, you could melt your opponent and even eliminate them with full health if you get a double headshot. The charge SMG though, I can't defend it, but I'm sure it has its fans. The armored walls were also in the loot pool as well, along with grenades, bandages, medkits, med mist, big pots, minis, chug splashes, portaforts, shield kegs, boogie bombs, shadow bombs, junk rifts, shockwaves, rift to goes, and the new grapple glove, a reskin of the Spider-Man mythic players fell in love with in Chapter 3 Season 1, however a little toned down. The Ripsaw launcher was also added this season, a launcher that, well, launches ripsaws. It was good for breaking through structures, and even though not everyone used it, including me, the people that did knew really OP strats with it and would definitely make it felt in the loot pool. For the first time in a while in Fortnite, there weren't any mythics acquired from killing bosses. Instead, you could break these beads on reality roots that would give you a reality seed that when placed in game over time would build up weapons and rarity, so in a later game you could come back to it and potentially get mythic versions of almost every gun in the loot pool. So getting mythics were very easy this season. There were also these exotics in the game at the time: the Dub, Shadow Tracker, Chug Cannon, Boom Sniper, and 6-shooter. Fire physics were still going strong, and tents were in the game too, making it even easier to save your good loot. The Baller was unvaulted and revamped this season too, and that combined with the other mobility options like the grapple glove, rift to goes, shockwaves, cars, crash pads, the wind tunnels, and even the ability to ride animals, the flow of the game was peak. Let's take a look at the map changes now, the reason why we're able to get mythic loot so easily and why ballers were unvaulted. As I mentioned earlier, the 0 Point created a biome called the Reality Biome, a biome with bluegrass and giant mushrooms. It changed the structure of the map and got rid of Camp Cuddle, while Greasy Grove survived but was badly damaged by the foliage. The Reality Tree, one of the best if not the best visually pleasing POI we have ever got, was added, as well as the Rave Cave that replaced Covert Cavern, a base that was once owned by the IO that has turned into a massive club with roller coasters that you can use the Baller to ride. All the crash blimps and army bases from last season are painted over and turned into vibe areas, as well as the Sanctuary Beach. Now the Battle Pass. How well did it encapsulate the vibes of vibin'? We had Eevee, Snap, Adria, Stormfarer, Malik, Sabina, and Darth Vader. All these skins made up a fire emoji score of 53,200, making this the best Season 3 Battle Pass so far. In my opinion, the Battle Pass is okay, nothing crazy though, but not bad. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I like the relaxed theme of the season after all the intensity from the prior seasons. I think it lived up to the vibe and name perfectly. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. The loot pool I'm actually going to give a 10 out of 10. It was my favorite loot pool in Fortnite ever. It had good mobility items, simple but unique guns, and nothing overpowered. The downside of the season though is definitely the storyline. It's still not very clear how the Herald even did what she did, but since I like the season so much, I can just write it off. I liked the gameplay too much to care about the story at that point. I'll give the storyline a 2 out of 10. Also, I forgot to mention that throughout the season, Logjam Lumberyard, the Butter Barn, part of Sleepy Sound, part of Condo Canyon, the Daily Bugle, and a temple were all taken over by the Reality Tree, causing each location every game to randomly have a different layout and theme. The possible themes were Neo, Pirate, Coliseum, Wild West, and Coral Castle. But for the Daily Bugle, I'm pretty sure it was just Lazy Lagoon theme. So with that combined with the already existing POIs and biome, this season gets a 10 out of 10 for map changes for me. Overall, Chapter 3 Season 3 is definitely my favorite Season 3 and one of my favorite seasons in general. But I still think Fortnite could improve, so I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Chapter 4 Season 3. Coming off of such a well-received season like Chapter 4 Season 2, this was another season that had a lot to live up to. 1,562 days after Chapter 1 Season 8, Fortnite would aim to reinvent the idea of a jungle theme. As I've stated, this season was not taken well by the fans, and there were a lot of contributing factors that play into why, but we'll get to that. Firstly, let's break down the season. Let's go. For map changes, as I said, this season aimed for a jungle theme, so the main map change of the season is a big jungle in the center of the map. However, this jungle is very different from the one we saw in Chapter 1. Instead of big hills and a volcano, the entirety of the jungle was in a hole in the ground. In this jungle, an ancient city was revealed. The new POIs introduced were Rumble Ruins, Shady Stilts, and Creaky Compound. Rumble Ruins was the bulk of the ancient city. Shady Stilts are ruins that were re-inhabited by the island's people, and Creaky Compound is a compound owned by the group that go by the Luminaries, which we'll get into later. The jungle had dense nature and several cliffs, as expected from a jungle. Players could use vertical zip lines to get to the top of trees and use them as a vantage point or camping spot. Though if you're playing in build mode, the risk is that you can't build. There were vines in the jungle that players could ride on for mobility. Mud was also found in the jungle biome that upon touch would cover your legs, and for a decent amount of time after, if you slid, you can move very fast. There were slurp plants that would give you health, stink plants that if shot would launch and burst into a stink bomb effect, and a similar plant that would explode. Mushrooms could be found along the sides of the ravines of the jungle that would provide mobility and help players get to higher levels of the jungle. There were vaults around the jungle too, that if you gave the door a worthy weapon like a purple, gold, or mythic gun, it would open up. Then if you solved a simple puzzle, you'd be able to get a lot of loot. But what was the loot this season? There were the Flapjack, Havoc, and MK Alpha for the ARs, Havoc, Sharptooth, Lever, Maven, Drum, and Dragon's Breath for shotguns, the Submachine, Combat, and Twin Mag for the SMGs, the Tactical and Mammoth Pistol for pistols, the Thermal DMR for marksman rifles, the Explosive Repeater Rifle and Heavy Snipers for snipers. Yeah, I guess the Explosive Repeater Rifle is categorized as a sniper and not an explosive, but whatever, it uses heavy ammo. For actual explosives, grenades, and the Firework Flare Gun. For healing and utility, we had quite a lot. Bandages, medkits, minis, big pots, med mist, slap juice, slurp juice, slap splashes, the grapple glove, shockwaves, cloak gauntlets, kinetic boomerang, pizza box, and the wild wasp jar. For the summer event, we also got all the different kinds of ice cream. We had the exotic Maven and heavy shotguns with the exotic P90 as well, accompanied by other exotics too, like the Shadow Tracker, Dragon's Breath Sniper, Super Slap Splashes, and the Chug Cannon. The weapons that were added throughout the season are the Flapjack Rifle, Thermal DMR, and Kinetic Boomerang at launch. And in the hotfix on June 13th, we got the MK Alpha AR, a version of the MK7 AR that shoots slower. On update 25.11, the Explosive Repeater Rifle was added, as well as the Cloak Gauntlets. The Cloak Gauntlets would allow you to go invisible for a short amount of time. In the hotfix, the Sharptooth Shotgun, a nerfed version of the pump, was added, as well as slap splashes. On update 25.20, the Mammoth Pistol will be added, which is still a beloved gun to this day, and a lot of people give the gun credit for, quote, carrying the season. And of course, we had a mythic version of the Flapjack Rifle, Havoc AR, Drum Shotgun, and MK Alpha. The Mythic Flapjack Rifle and Mythic Havoc AR could be obtained from killing a boss and opening a vault with the boss's keycard. The Jump Shotgun could be obtained by capturing the point at the loot island that would spawn in, and the MK Alpha could be obtained from killing a boss at Rumble Ruins. There was a lot in the game, but compared to the last two seasons that had a ton of mobility and items for heals, Fortnite seemed like they wanted players to use the natural features of the map for mobility and health instead, like the mud, vines, plants, and even riding raptors, because yes, those were unbolted too, along with other animals. There were cars in the game too, but not until players started complaining did Fortnite add things like the grapple glove back. Even then, players were not happy. They didn't like the addition of the kinetic boomerang, as it didn't provide any mobility like the previous kinetic weapons, and the majority of people didn't like the jungle biome either. They thought it was too cluttered and that there were too many places to camp. They didn't like that players could camp in the trees, and they didn't like that you couldn't build in the trees. All of this, along with the fact that the jungle biome was in a hole to begin with, people really started complaining a lot. I'll get to why this was such a big deal later, but for now let's just focus on the battle pass. This battle pass we had Era, Trace, Ryan, Relic, Mariposa, Lorenzo, and Optimus Prime for some reason. This battle pass hardly stuck to the theme, leading a lot of people to slap a big mid label on it, which I do agree with. This battle pass has an overall 35,000 fire emoji score, making this easily the worst Season 3 battle pass so far. Now the storyline of the season. Why did this jungle get revealed in the first place? Well, apparently the weight of Mega City that was spawned in the prior season put a lot of strain on the island and eventually made the middle of it crash down to reveal the jungle. In the jungle, there was an ancient apparatus, an apparatus that the ancient civilization used at one point. For what? We didn't know, but throughout the season we would help the luminaries, the people that were interested in uncovering the secrets of the civilization, to find the use of it. We eventually found out by markings in the ruins that if the apparatus was activated with kinetic ore during an eclipse, it would do something. We didn't know what at the time, but the marking suggested that it was something involving their god, or what they called their god. This would eventually end up being Kato Thorn, but many others and myself included really thought that this was going to be the last reality. Well, because literally the kinetic ore is the same ore that cubes are made of, there are cube runes on the apparatus, and the markings in the ruins kinda just look like the cube cradle that we saw in chapter 2 season 8, but no, I guess that was all just a big tease and we'll never get a conclusion to the last reality storyline. Now, I want to start off my opinion by saying I didn't mind this season at all, and I actually really enjoyed it. I was on the hate train at first because of the changes, but as I played more and more, I really didn't see the big issue. Heals could have been a little better, sure, but mobility wasn't even that bad. We had the vines, mud, raptors, cars, and if you played in zero build, there were shockwaves. I thought the jungle biome was really cool. All the locations had pretty good loot, and sure, people could camp in the trees and bushes, but that's what you get with the jungle biome. You were on edge in the jungle, and I like that. I'm pretty sure it could even rain at some locations too, so being in the jungle just felt really immersive. You had to focus on your environment a lot more and use it to your advantage, which is a lot to ask for some Fortnite players. Chapter 4 Season 3 didn't lack mobility or hills, it just cut back after having a crap load of them in the past 2 seasons. Because of that, people got kinda spoiled, so when they took it away, even just a little bit, the community threw a fit. Again, everyone has their own playstyle and preferred pace, but if you've been playing Fortnite for a while, you've liked seasons in the past with even less mobility and heals. This season wasn't bad, it just came after 2 seasons that really spoiled the fanbase. I thought the loot pool was great, and this season might honestly be my favorite in chapter 4. Cuck me, I know, it's just that I didn't mind having to focus more to win. I didn't mind playing a little bit slower. I enjoyed it. It felt like more of a complete experience to me. With that being said though, I was really disappointed that the storyline didn't end up going in the direction of the last reality, but I guess that's a chapter 4 season 4 storyline thing, so I didn't necessarily dislike the season storyline, but I did think it was dumb that Optimus Prime of all people was the messenger for cataclysmic events. Dr. Sloan also returned this season, but seemingly for no reason and without sense, because how did her and her tank survive this? Anyways, I'll give the theme of the season a solid 8. The season was loyal to it in almost every aspect. Shady Stilts was annoying and Rumble Ruins was okay, but I really liked Creaky Compound. Overall, the jungle biome is one of the most complex Fortnite biomes you've ever seen, and it looked great if you didn't have your game on performance mode like a sweat. The battle pass gets a 3 out of 10 for me. The only skin I liked was this edit style of Relic. Everything else was super forgettable to me, and the battle pass didn't really stick to the theme that good. The loot pool I'll give a 7 out of 10, and the storyline I'll give a 5 out of 10. Overall, I'll give chapter 4 season 3 a 7 out of 10. Chapter 5 season 3, Wrecked. Even though Chapter 4 Season 3 is ranked as the worst Season 3, this season by far is the most divisive season in Fortnite history. From cars, to nitro, to medallions, to map changes, this season had a lot to like and a lot to dislike for people. The casual and competitive players were at each other's throats this entire season, something that still look back to this day as a very interesting time in Fortnite and honestly a spectacle. If you loved the season, you loved the season. If you hated it, you really hated it. Let's talk about it. The theme of the season was a chaotic Mad Max-esque wasteland car theme, and there's no way that it would go under the radar if you played the season. The full effects of this season were felt every game. The main stars of the show were cars. Cars this season got a major buff. Players could upgrade their cars with turrets, grenade launchers, bulletproof tires, and spiked bumpers. That, along with a significant speed and health increase, as well as repair torches and health stations being added for them, cars were the meta. If you didn't have a car, your chances of winning the game plummeted. This would be the most controversial change for players across the whole community, but mostly felt on the zero build crowd. However, over in build mode, there was a whole nother demon to worry about. Nitro. Nitro was a new feature added this season. You could get the nitro effect by hitting a nitro barrel, taking a nitro splash, or going through a flaming boost hoop. It would allow you to have infinite stamina for a decent amount of time and also run significantly faster, as well as give you the ability to completely destroy anything you walk into. I'm sure you can see the problem here. If a player has nitro, they could just run through another player's box and it would ruin the whole flow of building. With nitro, you also have fall damage immunity, so if you were to run into someone's box and run into them, you could launch them back and kill them with fall damage while you could just fall and be completely fine. Nitro would also allow you to walk on water, have increased reload speed, and have better air control. Nitro could be found practically everywhere in the new Wasteland Desert biome. The entire bottom section of the map was wiped out. Fencing fields was replaced with the Nitrodrome. Snooty Steps was nearly wiped out but barely survived, being turned into Sandy Steps. 2 other new POIs were introduced, Redline Rig and Brutal Beachhead. The Nitrodrome, Redline Rig, and Brutal Beachhead all had boss cars, mythics, and medallions that could be obtained by killing the bosses at each location. Redline Rig would give you the mythic combat AR, Brutal Beachhead would give you the mythic combat shotgun and Nitro Fist, which I'll talk about later, and you could get the mythic boombolt at the Nitrodrome. The desert was split up into 2 parts, a part that's pure desert with dunes and a more grassy type area with trees. Slurp cacti could be found around both areas, healing 30 health. The battle pass includes the Machinist, Rust, Peabody, Ringmaster Scar, T60 Power Armor, Bright Raider, and Megalodon. This battle pass is definitely the best out of every season so far in terms of sticking to the theme. In terms of score, it has a 35,300 fire emoji score, just barely beating Chapter 4 Season 3. The Machinist was the boss at Redline Rig, Megalodon was the boss at Brutal Beachhead, and Ringmaster Scar was the boss at Nitrodrome. The Mechanist Medallion would refill your shield over time, Ringmaster Scars would give you infinite ammo and increase weapon damage, and Megalodons would give you an infinite nitro effect. As a nerf to cars, Boogie Bombs would be added on May 30th, just 6 days after the season launch, later to be vaulted and replaced with the Shieldbreaker EMP that could disable cars momentarily. In that same update, Update 30.10, the 2-hook cannon was added as well, a hook you could use to attach to cars. Even though the mythic combat was in the game, the other rarities wouldn't come into the regular loot pool until a hotfix on June 18th. On Update 30.20, the Heavy Impact Sniper was added and C4s were unvaulted. The train this season was also disabled and destroyed in the sand, but it would come back next season. For the already existing weapons, we had the TAC, Enforcer, Tri-Beam, Warforged, and Minigun for ARs, the Hammer and Gatekeeper for shotguns, the Harbinger and Thunderburst for the SMGs, the Ranger and Hand Cannon for pistols, and the Huntress DMR for marksman rifles. For heals and utility, we had bandages, medkits, medmist, minis, big pots, Flowberry Fizz, Crash Pad Juniors, Shockwaves, and the Nitro Fist. The Nitro Fists were mainly a mobility item, but players could also attack other players with it, and it could be very spammy. If you didn't like the season, this was another big issue. Last season, mortals were at war with Zeus, and when we eventually ended up winning, Zeus tried to take us down with him. He used his powers to strike energy into the Pandora's box and release Megalodon from it. Starting as a sandstorm and ship on the horizon, it would eventually get closer and closer until it gave us all the map changes. Megalodon's ship, the Leviathan, needed to be recharged with Nitro. Only then could he put into action his evil plan of taking over the island. Throughout the season, a pipeline would be built from Redline Rig all the way to Brutal Beachhead, and eventually it'd be ready to refuel the Leviathan. But right when it looked like it was going to happen, Dr. Doom intervened and blew the whole pipeline up, revealing Pandora's box to gain the power from it. Now there's a lot to unpack here. This season is really weird for me. As someone that didn't like the entirety of Chapter 5, I didn't really play Seasons 1 and 2 much of the chapter. Of course, I still played enough to be considered a fan. I didn't quit or anything, but I just didn't play as much as I usually did. When Season 3 hit and I heard that the meta was cars, I was so disappointed. In general, I never understood why there were so many people obsessed with cars in the first place, so I was already annoyed enough, but when I saw all the upgrades that were for all the cars, I was mad. This season was now Fortnite Car Royale. There was no point in not staying in a car for the entire game, and I didn't like that. I thought it was lazy gameplay, and I still do. I would not like it if we ever returned to this season. However, the season did manage to captivate me in a way that other seasons of the chapter didn't. Season 3 of Chapter 5 is my most played season in Chapter 5, and I think it's because for one, I enjoyed the loot pool, and I never really had that many annoying encounters with the fist, and two, I think I just liked overcoming the stupidity of the overpowered stuff and still winning. It was like a challenge to me. As a zero build player, I didn't find much issue with the Nitro. I actually thought it was a great way to counter the cars. The overall theme of the season captivated me too. I liked the concept of the season, but not the full execution. So pretty much I was on the hate train with this season until I eventually just accepted the chaos and kind of got used to the game. However, I absolutely despise collaborations interfering with the storyline of the game. I didn't like it in Chapter 2, and I didn't like it in Chapter 5. I could write Galactus off because the event was crazy and the season wasn't based around a single character, but a season just based around Doom? Yeah, I didn't play that season at all until Fortnite Mares at a Spite. But that's not what we're talking about. I'll give the theme of Chapter 5 Season 3 at 8 out of 10. I'll give the Battle Pass a 7 out of 10, and for the map changes as well. The loot pool is 6 out of 10 because the hit scan wasn't in the game, cars excluded, and I'll give the storyline a 4 out of 10. Overall, I'll give Chapter 5 Season 3 a 5 out of 10. And that is all the Season 3s in Fortnite currently. With Chapter 6 Season 3 coming up next, which leaks are saying it might be a Star Wars themed season. God, I hope that's not true. Maybe this next Season 3 will be one of the greatest seasons in Fortnite ever and break the so-called Season 3 curse. But for Fortnite to do that, they need to look back at their previous Season 3s and look at all the lessons they taught them. Chapter 1 Season 3, simplicity is fine, but it won't last. Chapter 2 Season 3, using the same gameplay cycle with a different theme doesn't mean it will be received the same. Chapter 3 Season 3, flesh out the storyline more. Chapter 4 Season 3, make sure there's viable heals and mobility. And Chapter 5 Season 3, never make vehicles the main meta. Now which battle pass was the best among fans according to Fortnite GG? Chapter 3 Season 3, and right behind it, Chapter 1 Season 3. If I had to rank each season from my favorite to least favorite, I'd put Chapter 3 Season 3 at first, Chapter 4 Season 3 in second, Chapter 2 Season 3 in third, Chapter 1 Season 3 in fourth, and Chapter 5 Season 3 in fifth. Chapter 6 Season 3 in sixth if it's really a Star Wars theme, please no. Well, that's all I have to say. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe and help me accomplish my goal of 1,000 subscribers by June. Give the video a like, comment down below your ranking of every Season 3. Peace out.